Okay, let's start off with this stupid disclaimer thing that apparently everyone has to do on YouTube. I'm a true crime channel. My videos are for educational purposes and for adults only. I don't do clickbait. I don't do live streams. My videos are pre-recorded videos where I talk about current cases. In this video, I'm talking about the Meline Soto case. For anyone who may have actually not heard of it, Meline Soto was a 13-year-old girl who went missing only a few days after her birthday in 2024. It was later discovered that her mother's ex-boyfriend was responsible. And now he's locked up, facing 2 trials, one because of images found on his phone, and one for Maddie's death. Okay, so moving on to today's video. Yesterday, in the part 2 of this, I left off at the point where there was a changeover of detectives. So this part of the interview is carrying on from where the Kiss Me detectives came in and took over and started interviewing Jenn. Now, there's still roughly an hour of this interview left. I'd like to be able to cover it in one video, but you know me, I have a tendency to yabber on a bit at times, so I'm not making any promises. It's possible that this could be a rather lengthy video, or it's possible that I reach a point where I go, okay, let's put this out as it is and do a part 4 tomorrow. Like I said, no promises. Before I jump in, I do just want to thank everybody for the support. As many of you know, it's been a rather stressful week with demonetization of many of my videos, and all the support that I've been given has just been phenomenal. I just really appreciate your encouraging comments and your suggestions, although I think we're good now with the suggestions. There's been so many. I'm going to stick with that intro for now. Maybe I will put one in later that doesn't sound quite so angry, but right now I think it's suitable given the amount of angst that YouTube has caused me over the past week with this constant demonetization. Especially for someone with ADHD. Because while I could just go, okay, well, I've uploaded this video, they've done limited funding again, I'll leave it, I'll deal with it in the morning. That never happens. Hence the reason the other night I was up again, up and down till 4 o'clock in the morning when I finally reached a point of utter exhaustion and just went, no, you have to leave this. So I think that just adds to the stress of it. So just having that support from everyone over it has been great. Thank you for the extremely generous super thanks, and to all the people who've bought me a coffee. That is so greatly appreciated. And I definitely feel somewhat humbled by your generosity. I certainly, sharing about what was going on with the demonetisation was just me basically getting it out in the open. Because we know, based on what's happened with the other YouTube channel, I can't think of his name, sorry, we know that this is something that keeps happening with true crime creators. And I think it's important for all of us to just be open about it and have that communication out there that, yeah, this is happening to our channels. Because it is so discouraging, but it does help when you know that, well, hang on, Strategic Eyes has gone through all this as well. Another channel has gone through all this as well. When you know that it's not just you that's fighting this crap, then it is a little bit easier and it allows you to just persevere. So that was the purpose of me sharing. I certainly wasn't expecting people to be giving super thanks or buy me a coffees, but that said, I do very much appreciate that bit of support also. Now, having said all that, another way that you can support me, if you've not done so already, is to click subscribe on my channel and also hit the like button. I'd love to be able to grow my channel a bit more. I think because I don't do live streams, that makes it harder for me to grow my channel. I'm just too ADHD to do live streams. That is just the fact of the matter. I get distracted by the chat if I'm doing a live stream, but if I don't look at the chat, I feel like I am being kind of rude, because obviously part of doing a live stream is interacting with your audience. For me, that just completely undoes me. The only instances where I am ever successful in doing a live stream is if I have a guest on with me who can basically keep the conversation going. Otherwise, I do just become utterly distracted and it becomes painful to listen to, in my opinion. Okay, well, enough of the painful yabbering. Let's just jump in and get on with the rest of this interview.
Hey, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Hello, my name is Mark. I work with the Kissimmee Police Department. Okay, great.
Thank you. That's your work phone?
No,
Is that what?
but that's the.
Okay, thank you.
So the reason I am here, or we are here, is because we think when went missing, you live in our city limits. Okay. So that's the reason we got involved now. Okay, do you understand?
Yeah.
So now that you're familiar with who's who in terms of detectives and everything, this is Detective Mark Morris, who also did the video interview with Stephan. I believe that he probably has Corporal Brandon Ilgen with him as well. Now, what he's not telling Jen here is that his full role as a detective is that he works with the Major Rhymes unit. Sorry, it's only 6 minutes into the video, so I figure that's probably one of those words. Showing that this is now being stepped up to a higher level. At this point in time, they have... I've just gone through and looked at some of the documents just to get context. So at this point in time, they've actually discovered the footage of Stephan disposing of the backpack and the laptop and everything in the dumpster. They basically know exactly what it is. So I think probably not that they've discovered the footage, they've discovered what he had disposed of. Sorry. So that information has come to light. That is enough for them to now escalate it to the MCU, let's say, Major CU, because obviously they now have solid evidence that Maddie went missing in Kissimmee, not from, like, up around the school, and they also have solid evidence that Stephan is involved. They're not going to tell Jen that, obviously, because, well, she's being somewhat obstructive, essentially, isn't she? She's being deceptive in her answers, and it seems pretty clear to the detectives, I believe, that that's what's happening.
All right, so I understand you probably answered a lot of questions and you've got a lot of stuff going on. I am apologizing now, I may ask you the same things that you've already been asked. That's just because I like to hear it for myself, okay? And I know you've been speaking with her quite a bit, but we want to do what we can to find it as soon as possible, okay? So that's our main focus right now.
Okay, so I stand corrected. I had thought, when I heard Detective Tagler's voice, that she had just asked him the question about the phone and exited the room. But it sounds like she is the other detective that's sitting in on this part of the interview, because he's just referred to, I know you've spoken to her a bit. Obviously, you're not going to refer to her unless she is there in the room for you to indicate the person that you are actually talking to. So it must be Detective Mark Morris with Detective Myra Tagler. I'm just going to say, given her success previously, I know you've got the whole hierarchy and he's probably been in the position much longer, but I reckon they should have just let her have another crack at Jenn.
Right. So, but before I get started, your first name is, right?
Yes.
And your last name is? What's your telephone number? And you live? Is that right? Okay. What apartment number is that? Okay, so I'm gonna ask you, and once again, I apologize. So on Monday, you should have gone to school. Is that right? Okay. So tell me how that morning went. Actually, let's go the night prior.
Okay.
So
night prior, she had a party at my mom's house. I couldn't be there because I was at work.
where do you work at? Okay.
She had a party. She had a good time. She spent the entire time with my family. Later that evening, around 8:30, my sister dropped her off at my house. And she started getting ready for bed, or doing her nighttime routine, which is take her meds and get in the shower. About 10 minutes after she arrived, Stephan arrived. And he let me know that she was doing what she was supposed to be doing.
Stephan is?
My boyfriend.
Your boyfriend, okay.
It drives me nuts anytime someone refers to him with a title other than ex-boyfriend or loser who shouldn't have been anywhere near this child. Now, every time I hear Jenn recite this story, and that's what she's doing, she's reciting, it brings to mind a game that we used to play in primary school, and it was like meant to be to develop your listening skills and your recall skills, etc. And it was that game where one person starts it off, I went to the shop and I bought an orange. And the next person has to remember that, and they're like, I went to the shop and I bought an orange and an apple. And then the next person's like, I went to the shop, I bought an orange, an apple, and 2 bananas. It's that sort of thing where basically she's trying to remember all the bits that go to this narrative. Of course, she's far more fluent than what I was there because she knows this off by heart by now. But it's definitely that very mechanical recitation that comes from sharing a concocted story.
He arrived. He made sure she was doing what she was needed to be doing. I got home around 10:30 and saw that she was almost ready for bed. I ate. We talked for a little bit. Asked how the party was to show me her gifts, how everything went, and then she went to bed.
Now, in I think the derivative use interview, they actually asked her if Maddie was still getting ready for bed, and Jen's like, no, I think she was ready at the time. Here she's like, I came home, I saw she was still getting ready for bed. She's like, I ate, we talked. Like, hey, well, when did she finish getting ready for bed, Jenn? I still have struggles with this Sunday night narrative from Jenn, especially because this part, which now includes her in the narrative, still has the same cadence as the earlier part where she is just conveying information that doesn't include her, which is therefore not immediate recall. This is basically her still telling the same story.
And this is around, you said around 10:30 she went to bed?
Around 11.
11, okay.
At this point, I sent them. We have 2 bedrooms. We're a 4-bedroom townhouse, but there's a bedroom and a guest bedroom.
Okay.
I sent them upstairs to the guest bedroom because I had not slept well the night before. I had forgotten my psychiatric meds and I was feeling off. I was not feeling okay. So when I got home from work, I said, guys, I need a good night's sleep. They all wanted to sleep in my bed, all 3 of us together.
Okay. Is that normal?
Yeah, for us to do that, yeah.
Okay.
When he's not around, he sleeps with me.
Mm-hmm.
If he's around, he'll sleep upstairs sometimes in the guest bedroom or with us in our bed.
Mm-hmm.
But the 3 of us on my bed is pretty uncomfortable. It's a king, but my child sleeps like a monkey. She just kicks and punches.
Well, 1 or 2, I know.
Yeah.
So again, she's re-emphasising how uncomfortable it is for 3 of them to share her bed. Which to me definitely makes me think that when Stephan's there, it's a rare occasion for 3 of them to share her bed. And she's had that slip up in another interview where she pretty much says that on school nights Maddie goes upstairs with Stephan. So I think we're a little bit closer to the truth when she starts admitting how uncomfortable that bed is for 3 of them. And I think what she's actually indicating here is that 3 of them sharing the bed just generally does not happen. Or has not happened quite frequently for a long time. Presumably once Maddie started getting bigger and closer to adult size.
Chill up on one side and wake up on the other. It's just, yeah. So I asked them to sleep upstairs that night to give me a good night's sleep, and they said okay, they would. And from what as far as I'm aware, they went upstairs. They went to sleep.
Now here's the thing, that's an outright lie. First of all, while we can't be certain what time Maddie and Stephan went upstairs, we know Maddie's phone wasn't taken upstairs until pretty much 20 past 11, 11:19. But Jen's comment, that she believes they went straight to bed, that's wrong. Because they have those text messages from Jenn to Stephan where she's telling him she needs to go to bed now. And those messages were about 15 minutes after Maddie's phone went upstairs. What was going on that made her have that response? Because to have that response indicates that she knew that Maddie wasn't in bed, or there was something that indicated to her that Maddie wasn't in bed. Were there noises upstairs that she could hear that made it clear that people weren't settling down to go to sleep? Who knows? Well, Jenn knows. But the point is, she has never mentioned that in any of the interviews. Instead, she says here that she thinks they went straight to bed. Well, she knows that's not the case.
I was woken up around, I want to say 8 o'clock in the morning on Monday by Stephan trying to put the leash on the dog to walk him. And I got up to try to help him with it, but Stephan got it and walked him and told me to go back to bed, so I went back to bed.
It really bothers me that we never heard any version of this from Stephan. His account is him basically popping his head in the room to keep her updated with Maddie's progress, with getting ready. The other thing that bothers me, and I've said this so often, is that she admits here she was up, she was awake, and yet she couldn't be bothered getting off her ass to go say good morning to her daughter. To me, that says either you couldn't be bothered saying good morning to your daughter, which, you know, with Jenn, highly likely, or you knew that your daughter wasn't going to hear you say good morning to her for obvious reasons. I do question the timeline with this, because each time she goes back to around 8, a bit after 8, that sort of thing. And I do wonder if that actually ties in with him returning to the townhouse. Because he returned to the townhouse, I think it was around 8:19. It was, you know, about 8:15 that he returned to the townhouse. So that could connect. If so, what was he looking for in her bedroom?
Okay.
I heard people in the kitchen. I'm not sure exactly who because I do have roommates and they're up at all hours. So I heard somebody in the kitchen. I assumed it was getting ready for school. Left her phone on her nightstand. I know she walked into the kitchen, into her bedroom to get ready and all that because she left her phone on her dresser in her bedroom.
Oh my gosh, I never actually picked up on that before. Now, with yesterday's video, there was a comment made by one of my regular subscribers about Jenn's narrative basically falling apart. She was saying things that she then needed to correct. And what I've just picked up on here is that she is reciting her narrative. Once again, definitely reciting. She's not speaking from memory. She's giving a recitation. And she says, Maddie left her phone on her nightstand. And then it's like she hasn't even acknowledged that she said that. And she turns around and then says that she knows that Maddie got ready in her bedroom because she left her phone on her dresser in her bedroom. So that's really curious. Now, we know from the data that the phone was turned back on. It was turned off shortly after 7 that morning, and it was turned back on again at around a little bit after 10, about 10:20. So the only person that could have turned it back on was Stephan. But I had presumed that he carried it downstairs, put it on the dresser, and then turned it back on. But now Jenn is saying she left it on the nightstand. Is this a bit of leakage from Jenn? Did she actually go upstairs and see Maddie's phone on the nightstand? That's really interesting. Now, when we were going through the timeline of Maddie's phone, I had questioned why it didn't show the phone coming down in elevation. And a few people said to me that while it will usually show a increase in elevation, as in going upstairs. Often it doesn't show that decrease in elevation coming back downstairs again. So is it possible that Stephan turned the phone back on when he came back to the townhouse before Jenn got back, and it was left upstairs on the nightstand, and Jenn found it there, but then wanting to avoid mentioning that she'd been upstairs, because she's very adamant about, I haven't been upstairs, I wouldn't know if there was a mess. Even though she says other things which to me indicate that she did go upstairs. Did she go upstairs at some point during that morning and discover Maddie's phone on the nightstand? I'm really curious, because she's definitely given two different stories here. There's a huge difference between a nightstand and a dresser. To me, the nightstand is the little square thing that sits next to your bed. The dresser is the big, long thing with the drawers in it. And the fact that she didn't actually even realise what she'd said makes me think that there's definite leakage there. Was it Jenn who brought Maddie's phone downstairs and then came up with the story of it was on the dresser because she wanted to distance herself from having gone upstairs? Because here's the thing, the flatmate, I believe her story basically is that Stephan was doing washing in the afternoon after Jenn had gone to pick up Maddie. If Jenn had gone upstairs in the morning, then there would have been stains on that bed. It happens when someone dies. Meaning she definitely knew something was going on. Is this why she's adamant about excluding anything from her story that has her going upstairs?
And I know she did that while she was getting ready that morning.
No, what is considered her bedroom? Where?
In the living room.
Okay.
We've got like a little wall partition, and she's got a bedroom in the living room. It's got a bed, a dresser, a desk, and a TV. She doesn't sleep there though. She just hangs out there during the day. That's her space.
Now, you would expect, having just mentioned nightstands, that in listing what Maddie has in that fake bedroom, she would include that in the list, not just a bed, a dresser and a TV. So I do think that when she mentioned the phone being left on the dresser, that was actually a bit of a slip on Jenn's part, and the phone was actually upstairs on the dresser.
She'll hang out there. But yeah, she got ready, supposedly, and they were off. They left to school early.
Okay, I think this interview may in fact be the most revealing interview. Did you catch what she said about Maddie getting ready? She got ready, supposedly. Why would you say supposedly? If you believe that your child has gone to school, of course she got ready. You're only going to say supposedly to indicate doubt. Well, she got ready, or so I've been told, but I'm not really sure if that actually ever occurred. Jenn is leaking like a sieve at the moment.
I'm not sure what time they left.
Again, going back to what I was saying in one of the earlier interviews. Because Detective Tagler blew the crap out of Stephan's timeline, Jenn doesn't know what time she should be saying now for when they left. So she's like, I don't know what time they left. Not exactly in that voice, she was still just reciting. But basically, clearly they have communicated over the fact that his timeline got shot to pieces, because she is determined not to give anything in relation to that timeline now. She's suddenly being very vague about times, not even saying, he told me he left around this time.
What time does her school start, do you know?
She's gotta be at school at the latest by, 9:28.
Do you know what time her school starts?
9:28.
Okay. Okay.
From what I was told, he dropped her off somewhere between 8:30 and 8:45, or somewhere along that line.
From what I was told, meaning that she is now doing her best to distance herself from the timeline. She just does not want to be connected in any way with Stephan's actions, which to me says that it is at this point in time when Jenn is definitely starting to realise that the wheels are falling off.
Around that time,
And Stephan told you this?
actually that timeline might be from what the cameras, the church cameras you guys have told me about, but we don't know if that was really her, so I'm not sure about the timeline anymore.
Well, that's interesting, isn't it? He asks her, and Stephan told you this? And she has to backtrack. She brings up the church cameras and then says, so I'm not sure about the time anymore. That's a very, very calculating move. She doesn't want to say anything that is going to give away the fact that she helped come up with the timeline. That is my true belief. Because even before discussion of the church cameras, she was giving this version of he dropped her off around 20 past, 8:30. Now that she knows that they are focusing on him, she's using the church cameras as basically an excuse for this is why I think this. And she doesn't want to commit to saying that Stephan told her anything. Is this because she doesn't want to lie? Because Stephan didn't tell her that it was something they agreed upon between them? She's being very, very careful here about dissociating herself with all Stephan's actions from that morning. She doesn't really know what time they got out the door. Now she doesn't really know what time he dropped Maddie off because, I thought it was to do with the church camera, but you guys aren't even certain about that anymore. She knows that's BS about the church camera. So Jenn is basically sticking in Jenn's lane. She wants to stand up for Stephan, and she still does favour Stephan over Maddie, but at the same time, she's being careful not to involve herself in that morning narrative.
He said he went, I think he had given me a timeline of, he dropped her off somewhere between 8:20 and 8:45, but he's not sure exactly what time.
Okay.
He said they were making good time that morning. He was like super impressed with how quickly she got up, got ready, and was out the door.
Again, she realises she's got to answer the questions. So now she says, I think he told me this. So suddenly it's all about hearsay. I think he told me this. So if you come back at me later on and say, actually, that's not what occurred, I can say, well, remember, I wasn't sure. She's definitely distancing herself right now.
I know she wanted to meet up with her friends at school early, and I know
Did she tell you that?
Yeah,
Okay.
and I know she wanted McDonald's early that morning for breakfast.
And now she's switching the timeline over onto Maddie. She wanted to meet up with her friends early. She wanted McDonald's early for breakfast. So no longer is there anything of, well, I suggested that it would be nice to do that. No. She wanted to do it. Okay, but why would you not question it then if your child was so adamant that she wanted to have McDonald's for breakfast? Why would you not question the reason why she changed her mind? And of course we know she didn't want to meet up with her friends early because her friends go to school on the bus. So they arrive at a basically set time. They're not going to be at the school early to meet up with her. And if she wanted to meet with them early, then this is a child who's not a morning person. Why would she want to then, before meeting up with her friends early, want to get there even earlier to do a 10-minute walk to get there? None of the stories line up, and Jenn is not questioning any of it. And I honestly don't believe that she's that dumb.
But Stephan said she was asleep in the car for the majority of the car ride, and he kept trying to talk to her and talk her into getting McDonald's. But she kept saying, no, just drop me off.
Okay.
So this is where she got dropped off somewhere on the road, close to school, and then I don't know what happened to her. But this is what I was being told happened that morning.
Gotcha.
This is what I was being told happened that morning. Meaning, I don't actually put a lot of weight on this. When you say this is what I was being told, you are conveying doubt. And yet, when presented with these images, she's like, go check the vape store footage, because if you find that, you'll see that he was telling the truth all along. She's trying to convince the detectives, on one hand, that she believes Stephan didn't do anything wrong. Stephan couldn't possibly have harmed Maddie in any way, and hey, check out the footage, you'll see that he didn't lie to you, so he must have dropped Maddie off at school. But she's hedging her bets. Here, she's basically protecting her ass and showing doubt. This doubt is either because she doesn't know what happened, but now she's processing that basically Stephan's done these horrible things, so yes, maybe the detectives are right about him being involved. Or this is her being quite devious and manipulative and going, they are now looking at him quite closely, they are scrutinising him closely, I need to distance myself from the whole thing. Which one is it? Well, here's the thing. If she was oblivious to what happened, and in her mind she's starting to go over towards the guy is a liar, he must have done something to Maddie because I've seen these photos, why does she continue to stand up for him, not just in this interview, but in the interview the following day when she's had time to process? The only way that she would still be standing up for him in that March 1st interview is because she knew all along. She's distancing herself but at the same time, she's still trying to protect him.
And then you went to pick her up after school. Is that right?
Yeah. I left the house at 2:30. School is not let out till 4 o'clock, but it takes me about 20 minutes to drive, 25 minutes. And then I wait that hour outside. I like being the first car in line. I like being the first
Because it'll take you an hour to get through the line if you don't.
Exactly. So I like being the first parent. I waited that hour and something minutes for 4 o'clock to show. 4:04 is when the bell rings. Waited there until like 4:10 and she didn't come out. That only sounds like a few minutes, but in those few minutes, the cars behind me got full of children. I'm the first in line, so there's cars behind me already picking up their children. They're waiting to get out. So I felt pressured and rushed, so I decided to drive away. I'm like, she's not here, something's wrong. Or maybe I forgot to tell her that I was picking her up. Maybe she just decided to walk to my mom's office.
Yeah, we've gone through this a million times before. I've even showed you images of the front of the school which show you that sitting there waiting at the front of the car line is not going to be holding anyone up, because the driveway is well and truly wide enough for people to drive around her and exit. So she messed up her narrative, apparently. She's like, I decided to drive away. I was like, she's not here, something's wrong. Oh, and then she goes back to the original narrative of, maybe I forgot to tell her that I was going to pick her up and she's gone to my mother's work. So, which is it, Jen? Are you saying you were totally unconcerned, even though you were there an hour before school got out? Meaning that you know that she didn't actually exit the school at any point in time because you would have seen it. And yet you correct yourself when you're like saying that you were concerned. That is so bizarre. She's so caught up in giving the correct narrative that when she gets it wrong, instead of thinking, actually, that sounds better because it makes me sound like I care, she essentially goes, yeah, scrap that idea. No, I thought that she might have walked to my mother's work. This woman is amazing.
We'll do this sometimes. This is pretty close to the school. So I decided to drive along the path that she would have walked. And I drove to my mom's office and I asked, has she made it? And they said, no. And I said, okay, let me drive the path again and see if I see her along the way. Drive along the path, I park on the road where she would be walking, and I waited there for about 15 minutes and nothing. She didn't appear.
She waited there for about 15 minutes and nothing. Sounded like she was going to say nothing happened. Well, yeah, because why would you expect something to happen? And then she changes it to, she didn't appear. There's problems with the way she's narrating this, I have to say. Seems like she's forgetting the original narrative. But this whole and nothing is an odd comment to say. I'd be interested to know what the rest of that comment was going to be. Because if you've left the school after 6 minutes, driven to your mother's office, left there after a few minutes, driven back along the same route and then just parked randomly on the route, none of which actually sounds overly logical anyway, what is the nothing that you are talking about? Nothing happened? That's all I can think of. Which, like I said, begs the question, were you expecting something to happen? Because nothing happened implies doesn't imply she wasn't there, she didn't turn up. That implies something happening other than you sitting there and waiting for your daughter to show up. It's not the language you would use. You would say, and I didn't see her, or she didn't come by. Not, and nothing happened.
At this point, I returned back to the office. She should have been at the office by this point. It's like 4:35. She did not appear. So at this point, I call her best friend and I asked her best friend, hey, is with you? I don't think I told her I was coming to pick her up, but she's not walking or she's not at school. And she said, no, she never made it to first or second period. And I said, what do you mean she got dropped off? And she's like, she never made it to first or second period. I said, can you please check with your other friends to see if she made it to her other periods?
Why would you ask your kid's friend if she was on the bus with her? Because essentially, if Jenn rang her at the time when she claims that she rang her, then this child was still on the bus on the way home. I'm pretty certain that the bus wouldn't allow just any random kid from the school to hop on the bus and hitch a ride unless they had explicit parental permission. And let's be real, when has Maddie ever gone off somewhere after school with her friends? It's not something that would have happened. So why would Jenn even consider saying, I asked her if Maddie was with her? Now, when I think about Maddie's best friend, she comes from a family where her parents are very careful about, this is my assessment based on the interviews and everything, she comes from a family where her parents are very careful about how they are upbringing her and about what experiences she is allowed to have. This is a child who is not allowed social media, or wasn't allowed social media at the age of 13. Newly minted 13, of course, but still at the age of 13. My impression is that there's no way her parents would have allowed her to go off somewhere after school with her friends. This child would have been expected to come home on the bus, unless, of course, there was an arrangement and she was going to a friend's place and there was a parent involved in terms of the transportation, etc. I would imagine Jenn would know that also, given that these kids had been best friends for 4 years. She would know what limitations existed for this child. Again, the question, why would she ask her, is Maddie with you? It's an odd question, and it seems like a somewhat unnatural question. Why would you even ring the friend? Because you know that Maddie's not going to be with that friend. So the only thing that friend can tell you is if Maddie was at school that day. Wouldn't you just go directly to the source and make contact with the school? That's right. Jenn didn't make contact with the school because she didn't do any of this till after the 911 call was made, at which point in time the school was already closed. So now, in the eyes of her family, as far as she's concerned, she's not done anything, which is true. So now she's scrabbling to look like she's just going all out to figure out what's going on with her daughter. So she's messaging or contacting Maddie's friend. She goes to the school with her mother. This is all just a big act.
At this point, I start panicking and I drive back to the school to check her attendance, but the school office had already closed. So
What time was this?
This is around 4:45.
Okay. And the school was closed already?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think they closed at like 4:30.
I think it's really significant that she doesn't mention to the detectives, firstly, that it wasn't her who rang 911, and that in fact she returned to the school with her mother. Because, of course, that would bring the question of whose idea was it to ring 911? Whose idea was it to return to the school? And I suspect that the answer wouldn't be my idea, given that she was quite happy to just sit back and let Letitia do the 911 call. And, well, I gather that Yolanda seems to be a bit of a matriarch in that she calls the shots in the family. She was probably the one that went, well, what have you done, Jen? And Jen's like, oh, well, I just sat on the road. And she'd be like, well, okay, come on, let's go back to the school. Which should have happened 40 minutes earlier.
I went to the school, I rang the bell, they were closed, nobody was opening the door. So we decided to leave. But I had already emailed one of her teachers. I think when I had spoke to her best friend, I had emailed the teacher. The teacher confirmed that she never made it to his period and never made it to any of her other periods that day. He checked her attendance for the whole day.
Mm-hmm.
When he told me this, I realized something was really wrong. It was truly wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I called, well, I didn't call, my sister called 911. I started having a panic attack.
And what time was this?
I'm gonna say around 4:45, 4:50.
Okay.
I get so annoyed with her here, trying to make it sound like she's the concerned parent, when in reality, I don't know if she did have a panic attack, but let's look at this the way it actually happened. Jen did nothing until 4:43. Jen still did nothing at 4:43 because that was the time when the first 911 call was made by Letitia. It was then after that call was made that Jen made contact with Maddie's friend. Jen and Yolanda went back to the school. And then Jen sent a message to Maddie's teacher. He didn't receive that message till 5 p.m. Let's not talk about him. But he didn't respond till well after 5, after the 911 call had already been made. So apparently, while Jen's family were all starting to worry about Maddie being missing, according to Jen, she didn't start to panic until she heard back from the teacher that Maddie hadn't been at school. Which means that it took her an hour of her daughter being absent for her to start to panic. And usually when someone is relaying something like that and they are talking about a traumatic experience, you hear it in the tone of their voice. We don't hear that from Jen at all, do we? She's still just basically narrating a story. There's no emotion. There's no description of physical sensations. She's just saying, yeah, I started to panic. Yep, okay, we believe you, Jen.
And yeah, I called Stephan. I asked Stephan, I'm like, did you drop her off? He said, yeah, why? I'm like, she never made it to school. He's like, what? What do you mean? I'm like, I don't know. Just come to my mom's office. She's not here. She's not here. And he drove immediately to the office.
So in this version, we have Jen contacting Stephan after the 911 call to say, she's not here. Come to the office, and he came to the office. And that does fit with the timeline in terms of when he did actually turn up at the office. Basically, he turned up a bit after 5, meaning that had he come immediately after being contacted by Jen, he would have basically made it at that time. So it's interesting that on one hand we have this story of them talking while Jenn was waiting in the car line, and Jenn telling him that Maddie hadn't come out while she was still in the car line apparently. And now we have this version where after the 911 call she contacts Stephan. They can't get their stories straight.
And then waited with me while we called 911. I was having a panic attack, trying to stay calm, but it was really hard. I think we waited about 3 hours for the police to show up. I think 2 children had gone missing around the same time in a park nearby, so all the cops were answering that call. Eventually a family member went over to the park and spoke to an officer and let him know, hey, there's another missing child, please come take the report. So they followed him and brought him to the office, and then he took down our statements and made the report, and then everything, the process started. They were there for, I'm gonna say 1 to 2 hours, and then it was time to go home.
Okay.
Now, if you weren't paying attention, you probably missed the bit where she talked about feeling anxious and trying to stay calm and all that, because there was no emotional connection with it, and it was just as if she was reeling off a list. Well, you know, we were waiting at the office and it took about 3 hours for the police to come, and I was feeling anxious and trying to stay calm. And, you know, there were other kids missing at the time, so someone went to find the police officers and brought them back here. It's all very matter of fact. There's no discussion of actual emotions, actual experiences. There's no, I had to find somewhere to sit down because I thought I was going to pass out, or I was becoming increasingly upset because they weren't doing anything and they weren't here. None of that. She just brushes over that part of it so quickly.
So ever since then, since the officer took the report, or the deputy took the report, have you been looking for, have you been driving around?
I've been staying at home just in case she comes home.
Okay.
My family, I have a huge family. They've been driving around, they've been walking the walking path behind the school. They've been handing out, they've handed out like 1,000 flyers already. They're the ones who contacted the news.
Now, Jenn was actually asked at another time, could Maddie find her way home? And she said no. Maddie wouldn't know how to get there. And yet her reason for not going out searching is that she stayed home just in case Maddie came back. And then to distract from it all, she starts reeling off all the things that her family members did, trying to basically use that to garner some points for herself. Oh, it's okay that I didn't search because I've got a huge family and they all went and did all these things. So that makes up for the fact that me, the mother of the child who's missing, just sat on my ass at home and did absolutely nothing. Also, in this version, her family contacted news stations, not her. Whereas other times, she talks about getting up early the morning after Maddie went missing so she could contact all the news stations and stuff, or whatever she said.
Has she gone missing before?
Never.
She never ran away, even if it's for a couple hours or anything like that? Okay. So when you physically or talked to her, it was the night before?
Yes.
Is that right? Okay. And how was she then? What was her demeanor?
Happy. She had the best party. she loved her presents, her gifts. She had a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
So she was showing me all that. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I guess maybe she could have become happy after the party. Maybe she was high on sugar by that point. But it just doesn't ring true with everything we've heard. Maddie's best friend was saying Maddie was upset. She was upset with her mother for not going to the party. She was upset that she only had one present. She was upset that she didn't think she got a lot of money. And yet everything Jenn says contradicts that. She came home, she was happy, she had she loved the gifts that she got. Like, she got one gift apparently. She got a lot of money. Well, why are we hearing different stories here, Jenn? It bothers me so much that either... And like I was being facetious when I said Maddie was high on sugar, because it sounds like it was more a sort of a family party where she had these nice meals cooked for her. It wasn't like a fill your brains with as much sugar as you can load them with and go nuts kind of party. So I just do not understand where Jen's coming from here. Not only that, but if Maddie had come home and taken her hydroxyzine at like 8:30, even if she'd taken it at 9:30, by the time Jenn got there, Maddie would have been so mellowed out if she wasn't already asleep. So it just makes no sense, Jenn claiming that she was all super happy and super excited over her party. And it just really bothers me. This woman is supposed to be the mother of this child, and yet she seems to be lying at every turn.
So, how was her sleeping habits? I know you said she was up and at 'em in the morning. Is she... Because some kids like to sleep all day, some kids get up and then they're ready to go. What's she like?
So when she sleeps with me and I have to wake her up,
Mm-hmm.
she's difficult. She'll snooze 3-4 times. We'll hit the alarm a few times, let it ring, and then go back to sleep, and then let it ring, and then go back to sleep. When it's her waking up herself and she sets her own alarms on her phone, which is what I think she did that morning, she usually gets up pretty quickly. She doesn't snooze. She'll get up, she'll immediately go do what she needs to do, and then she'll either lay back down in bed and snooze until it's time to go,
Mm-hmm.
or yeah, just be ready to go.
Now, I'd like to hear your interpretation of this also, but he's asked her about what Maddie's like of a morning. And Jenn describes, she says, when she sleeps with me, and describes Maddie being difficult to get up, she needs to snooze a few times, she struggles to get up. But then she turns around and says, when it's her waking up herself and she sets her own alarms on her phone, she's pretty good. And she gets herself ready and then she might go back to sleep while she's waiting for breakfast or whatever Jenn said after that. Which implies that basically that's a frequent thing. But it also implies that when it's her waking up on her own and she sets her own alarm, that implies that she does that on the times when she doesn't sleep with Jenn. Because she started by saying, when she sleeps with me, this is how it happens. When it's her waking herself up on her own, this is what happens. Two separate things, either or. So, is she referring to when Maddie sleeps upstairs with Stephan? And Maddie sets her own alarm at that point in time? Because Stephan probably sleeps through, given that Stephan doesn't take Maddie to school. In which case, she's normalising it. This goes up there with the, well, on a school night, something like about her sleeping with Stephan because the alarms bother her or something like that. Can't remember that exact quote, but you know what I'm talking about. But it honestly sounds to me like she is basically normalising Maddie sleeping with Stephan because she said Maddie won't sleep alone. Well, I mean, we don't know if there's any truth in that, and whether perhaps Maddie did sleep in her own room occasionally. Although according to Jenn, she never did. The flatmates don't really know. But seems like there was something that was a normal part of Maddie's routine where she wasn't sharing a bed with Jenn, and when she basically was responsible for setting her own alarm of a morning and getting up. So, Jenn, tell us, how many times did Maddie sleep with Stephan? Because I'm starting to think that it's definitely way more than your, I can count on one hand. Oh, I can count on two hands, or I can count on less than two hands. Or it wouldn't be more than 5 times. She can't get her story straight.
Do you take her to school?
Yeah,
Okay. When you take her to school, where do you drop her off at?
at the school.
Okay, so you pull in through the line and drop her off at the front and stuff like
Yeah.
that. When she goes to school, when you take her to school, is she talkative in the car, or what does she do on the way there?
Not really. She'll be on her phone. We'll listen to the radio station, or listen to some Taylor Swift. Yeah, she's pretty quiet. She'll be snoozing, sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a bit of an attempt there at a quick save. He's asking her about what Maddie does in the car when she's driving Maddie to school. And of course, she talks about, oh, you know, she might be playing on her phone, or we listen to a bit of Taylor Swift, or, you know, she's pretty quiet. And then she's like, and then she might be snoozing, sleeping. She's added it on as an afterthought. Because, of course, we know Stephan's version of the story is that Maddie was sleeping the whole way there. And, of course, him having said that to Jenn, apparently, means that Jenn should accept it as a normal behaviour. I would like to know how many 13-year-old children, 12-year-old children, actually do snooze in the car on the way to school. Because I'm pretty certain that there's none. And yet, because Stephan's used that story, now Jenn has to add it as well. And here's the interesting part. So, supposedly, you have all this stuff of she didn't want to go to Macca's, she was rummaging through her backpack when she got to school. So, apparently, this one time that Maddie forgot her phone, when Stephan had so much extra time that he even drove all the way back to the house to collect a gate clicker. This just happens to be the one morning when she didn't decide to sit there and play on her phone on the way to school. Convenient, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. So, going back to Stephan, was Stephan at the party?
No.
No, okay.
He was traveling from Northport, Florida to
Where's Northport?
Sarasota County.
Oh, okay. And he got here when?
So if she got dropped off around 8:30, he probably showed up around 8:45.
Did you know he was coming?
Yes.
Okay. So you guys hung out? What did you guys do that night? Okay.
Yeah. What did we do that night? I only spent about 30 minutes with them because I had to go to sleep. I had to take my meds and go to sleep. And I know that they need to go to sleep because they have to go to school, or she had to go to school. I usually like making bedtime around 10:30. So when I got there and she was still up, I understood why she was still up. She was waiting for me and wanted to show me all her presents and stuff. But by 11, I was just like, you guys need to go to bed. It's late. Like, it's super late. Sorry, I forgot what I was going to say.
I'm sorry, I forgot what I was going to say. You're giving a narrative. You're describing events where you were supposedly there and you suddenly grind to a halt with your narrative and you forgot what you were going to say, meaning you haven't got anything that you can add after the part where you send them to bed at 11 o'clock. Which is kind of interesting because, for starters, Maddie's phone doesn't go upstairs till 11:20. And you message Stephan at like 11:35 telling him that Maddie needs to go to bed now. And let's talk about you, Jen. Your phone didn't go onto the actual charger until midnight. So what was going on between that block of time from 11 to midnight that all of a sudden you have to slam on the brakes partway through your retelling of this narrative and suddenly you can't remember what you were going to say?
Is it normal if he comes to see you that he wouldn't sleep with you, or?
Yes, it's normal for him to sleep upstairs in the guest bedroom.
Okay. What makes it different from when he sleeps with you or the three of you or upstairs by himself?
It all depends on the circumstance of what's going on. For the most part, if it's a school week and me and have to go to school, I send him upstairs because I know that my alarms are going to go off multiple times super early in the morning and I don't want to wake him up.
That part right there. Now, I think that there's a bit of leakage there. And I think that she actually meant to say that if it was a school week, she would send him upstairs. But then even that doesn't make sense because she's just basically established that when he stays there, he sleeps upstairs. So I don't think she's even thought about what she's saying here. If it's a school week, I'll send them upstairs because my alarm going off multiple times wakes him up. So she has essentially admitted here that if Stephan's there and it's a school week, she sends Maddie upstairs with him. So basically, he moved up there, 4 months before he moved out? She's saying for that 4 months prior to when he moved out, and then all the visits that he made afterwards, that if Maddie had school the next day, that she would send Maddie upstairs with him. I think she is not even noticing what she's saying here. But this is the second time when she's essentially dobbed on herself, talking about Maddie going upstairs with him on a school night.
And it's difficult to wake up, so I have to constantly be talking to her, shaking her. So I, for the most part, it's me in the bed downstairs and he goes upstairs.
She actually doesn't realise what she said here at all, does she? Because now she's back to, I have to shake Maddie heaps to wake her up. So, for the most part, it's him upstairs and Maddie and me downstairs, which directly contradicts what she said about they sleep upstairs if it's a school night. So, I do think throughout this interview that she's contradicted herself several times. And not in a positive way for her. I mean, when you listen to it, it's really confusing. Because on one hand, she's saying, if it's a school night, I send them upstairs. And that's after saying, well, when Stephan's here, he sleeps upstairs. And now she's basically saying, oh, well, you know, so then it's normally Maddie sleeps downstairs with me and he sleeps upstairs. Completely missed the first part, and I think either the detectives missed it or they've made note of it to look at it at a different time, because obviously their priority right now is finding Maddie. So I guess they're trying to humour Jenn a little bit and persevere so that they don't get her offside, so that they may get some answers from her as to where Maddie is. Because at the end of the day, they couldn't really care less whether or not they're insulting the mother. Their goal is to find this 13-year-old child that's missing. But I honestly think with Jenn, that had they picked up on these inconsistencies and gone at her over them, that she probably would have sung like a canary. Because Jenn puts Jenn first. I don't know if they have someone on the staff who profiles people, or whether it's just detectives basically going with their own experience. If they don't have someone who sits there and profiles people, maybe that's something they need to do with their departments, because they missed a lot of golden opportunities here with Jenn.
What made it different that night?
The fact that I forgot my bipolar meds Saturday night,
Mm-hmm.
and I was not acting normal Sunday, and I realized Sunday night, oh my god, I forgot my meds Saturday night, which is why I've been so freaking weird today.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I need to take these meds and I need to sleep. I need like a good night's sleep. I can't wake up early in the morning. I can't take her. I can't do any of that. Like, I need you to do it.
Mm-hmm.
That's primarily the reason I told him to come from Northport, Florida to help me was this week, because of training at work. I needed help. I needed support. So I invited him up to help me with that.
Again, there's problems with her story. On one hand, she's talking about forgetting her meds on the Saturday night, and then she segues into essentially, that's why I asked him to come and help me, because I needed help because of work. Now, saying it that way sounds like she's saying, oh, you know, because I frequently forget my meds and it's just a big issue, and I knew I was going to forget my meds that night, so I had to ask him to come and help me. Because she's basically, in her head somehow, connecting him coming with her missing her meds, and saying that she needed him to come and help her because of work stuff. Well, I can see that maybe what she meant was that she was finding it challenging being back at work and just needed an extra set of hands around the house. But the fact that she's segued into it from talking about her meds, it just, there's a disconnect there that I'm having trouble with. I think an important question here that was not asked would have had to have been, when did you realise that you forgot your medications? Now, I don't know how bipolar meds work, but I'm sure it's not just ones that you take just before bed. I would imagine that there's daytime ones as well, especially because she claims that as soon as she takes the ones before she goes to bed, they knock her out, essentially. Well, they can't be long-acting ones that last for 24 hours because she would be knocked out for 24 hours. Meaning there must be a complementary medication that is taken through the day. And of course, the big thing with nighttime meds, you know if you've forgotten them, because your body becomes so reliant on them to get to sleep that she would have been sitting there at 1 o'clock in the morning going, wow, I'm wide awake, I can't get to sleep, I feel exhausted because I can't get to sleep, oh crap, I forgot my meds. At which time, usually you've got a bit of leeway and you can grab your meds and go back to sleep. Given that she was working later in the day on the Sunday, I would imagine that she probably could have actually done that because the meds would have worn off. Would have just meant that she got up later on the Sunday. So this whole story is just, it doesn't work in my mind. And of course we all know Jen is obsessed with her meds. Her one thought when they were talking about locking down the townhouse was, I need to get my medications. So I don't think she's the sort that is going to easily forget medications.
How long have you guys been together?
On and off for a total of 7 years.
Okay. Did you work on Monday?
No, I was off.
You were off, okay. So Monday during the day, what'd you do throughout the day?
I had a blood work appointment at 10:15, 10:30. That took a little while to be seen.
Did Stephan go with you?
No. He was not home he had not gotten home by the time I left.
Do you remember what time you left?
Around, I think 9:30.
And where was your blood work at?
About 15 minutes away.
Which way? Towards Kissimmee or Orlando?
Towards Orlando. It's on the border of Kissimmee, Orlando. It's in the Loop. It's across the street from the Loop. There's a doctor plaza there. There's a LabCorp there. So I went to LabCorp and I got blood work done.
Okay.
Waited there for a while. Then I must have gotten home sometime between, I would say 11:15, 11:30, something like that, or from 11 to 11:30 sometime.
Again, she has a really interesting way of discussing this. She's talking about this blood appointment, and in other interviews she talks about how, they were a bit late getting me in, so I didn't get home till quite, it was quite delayed. Here she says, I waited there for a while. You waited at your blood appointment for a while? You finished your blood appointment and you waited there for a while? Is that what you're trying to say? It's a really odd way of putting it. I don't say, I had a doctor's appointment and I waited there for a while. When you say I waited there for a while, it implies that you waited after whatever it was occurred. She's the one doing the waiting, not the one being made to wait, based on what she's saying here. She's not the passive one here. She's not, they made me wait. I didn't get in till really late because they made me wait a really long time. No. She's the one that's supposedly waited there for a while. Is she just... is she having trouble in this interview with focus or something? And is that why she keeps saying all these things that don't quite gel? Or is she letting her guard down and there's all this slippage, all this leakage that she hasn't even noticed that she's saying? But then at the same time, why does she still maintain that when she got back from that appointment, Stephan was there? Are they trying to create something to do with that particular part of the timeline? Why is that so important?
And he was there. But before that, while I was at my blood work appointment, he actually called me. He said, "Hey, I'm so sorry. I left my phone at home. I was running some errands. Did great this morning. We made super great time. She got ready super fast. We left super early. I offered her McDonald's multiple times, but she refused. So she asked to be dropped off early. And so he did."
That was like, oh, excuse me for a moment. I just missed a crucial part of Stephan's story that I should have told you. So hold that thought. Yes, I got back and he was there, she says very briefly. And then she's like, she backtracks and she's like, oh yeah, he rang me while I was there and he told me all these things. Well, he was on the phone to her for 8 minutes, and I guess you can say quite a bit in 8 minutes. But really, why are they such important or even interesting things to discuss? Sure, okay, maybe raising the she didn't want Macca's in the context of, oh, I hope she's okay because she decided she didn't want Macca's and that's just unusual for her to actually be bothered getting out of bed early. She doesn't like getting out of bed early. And she got out of bed early for Macca's, but then she decided she didn't want to, and I'm a little bit concerned. That's not the conversation we're talking about here. It's more a case of, we got there and I said, do you still want it? And she's like, no. So, just something isn't adding up here for me. Why is she like, I waited there, not they made me wait? And why was it so crucial for him to ring her and give her a blow-by-blow description of the morning when supposedly they were going to catch up with each other at some point in time? And why was it also, given that, you know, supposedly he came down to spend time with them, why did he actually leave early in the first place before she got back from her blood appointment to go to the vape store? Instead of making that phone call, why not just wait, have that conversation, and then go to the vape store? Because he had all day. For that matter, given that Jenn was in the locality, why not, since you're on the phone to Jenn already, say, look, when you finish your appointment, can you save me a trip out and just dash to the vape store and get me these things? There's something with this that just does not add up.
Does she ever go to school? Does she ever ask to go? Because sometimes kids don't want to go to school, period. Is it normal for her to ask to be dropped off early?
Yes, sometimes.
Okay.
She's asked me multiple times to ask her to drop her off early. She wants to meet up with her friends, or she wants to get there earlier and earlier, just to meet up with her friends.
But you still drop her off at the school?
Yes.
Okay. So she hangs out with her friends within the school?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, I know of some regional schools where they have a limited number of buses to do the bus runs. So there will be a few buses that will bring in the kids from further out, the kids who've got the long 40-minute to 1 hour bus ride to get to school. They'll get them to school and then turn around and go back and collect the kids that are only like 15 minutes away. So those kids will get there earlier than the other bus kids. But my understanding of busing is that generally the buses aren't going to be getting the kids there too early. It's not in anyone's best interests for that to occur. I would imagine, being Hunters Creek, that there wouldn't be limitations on the number of buses they have access to, because it would be a fairly populous area. I mean, there's businesses there. So I can't see Maddie's friends being all that early to school in the first place. So I really don't buy it when Jenn says that Maddie was asking to get to school early to meet with her friends and wanting to get there earlier and earlier. I just can't help thinking that all these stories are designed to back up Sterns and are not actually truthful.
The only reason I think he did not take her to school directly that morning is because she has voiced multiple times, hey, is Stephan taking me to school? Can you please drop me off far away? She's embarrassed by his car. It's a Cadillac, it's not that old, but to her it's an old hoopty. She can't be seen in it. She doesn't want to be seen in it. So she's made that comment before, please drop me off far away, I want to walk.
Mm-hmm.
Note how she makes it specifically about that car. Not once does she mention, well, actually, that's the first time he brought this car here. And it's not a Cadillac, it's a Lincoln. It's my understanding that Lincolns aren't Cadillacs. Let me know if I'm wrong there. I thought that was a completely different make. But this story just bugs me, because this notion of she doesn't like to be seen in his Cadillac or Lincoln. What was the other thing she called it? I think she called it a Buick at one stage. She doesn't like to be seen in that car because it's embarrassing. Well, as far as I know, she's never been seen in that car because he's never driven it. It's his parents' car. And maybe she went in it when she was down at Northport. But if you were a young 12-year-old kid and your mother's boyfriend's parents were going to drive you somewhere in their car, it's not like you would need to be embarrassed because you weren't going to see any of your school friends. But it seems to me somewhat doubtful that Deb or Chris ever would have driven Maddie anywhere in that car. So it bugs me so much.
But yeah, when you look at the car, to me it looks like a normal car. It looks old, but
Gotcha. Okay, so what's your and Stephan's relationship like?
so it's a little complicated. I want to say we're on again, off again. When he had moved back down to Northport in December, we were broken up, but we still kissed. We're still affectionate.
Why did you guys break up, if you don't mind me asking?
Because in my eyes, he's very childish. Well, not childish. He's just very sloppy. He's very messy. He doesn't clean up after himself. He doesn't help around the house or contribute. And I felt like I was the only one doing the household chores and the cleaning and the cooking and stuff. And I'm just like, listen, I know I'm disabled and I don't work, but I kind of, it needs to be fair. Like, you need to help me out and be a partner. And I didn't feel like he was being a partner.
See, we know that's an outright lie too, because they were broken up for 12 months before he moved out. When you dig deep, The information that comes out is that they broke up in the December, 12 months before he moved out of the apartment. He still shared a room with her for another 7 or 8 months before she made him move upstairs. And then, according to the story, he only moved out because Chris didn't want to pay any more rent for him. If they broke up because, as she's saying, he made a mess around the place, he didn't pull his weight, all that sort of crap, why would you keep him around? In fact, not just why would you keep him around, but why would you still have him sleeping in your bed with you, supposedly, for another 8 months? So that's definitely not the reason that they broke up.
Yeah, that's pretty much why. There's nothing major happened, anything like that. It's just my feelings of, I was just tired of cleaning up after him and tired of not having the partner that I wanted.
Nothing major happened. I was just tired of cleaning up after him and not having the partner that I wanted. Curious. Because you still kept him around. I wonder what actually she wanted in a partner. My thoughts here, based on the Woody Allen comments, is that she probably broke up with him out of jealousy. He wasn't giving her as much attention as what he was giving Maddie. So she basically was like, yeah, that's over. That seems to be the most logical answer when you hear her saying that he wasn't the partner that she wanted. When someone says that, it means that there's something that they're not doing, or something they're not doing right. Well, we know that she was not interested in partner activities. So all I can think of is that he just wasn't giving her the attention that she wanted. His attention was going elsewhere.
And when you guys got back together, or on and off, as you said, that's been since he's left, or just more recent?
I'm gonna say more recent. We were still kissing while we were broken up and all that. So
Would he come here? Would you go there?
he would come here. He's only been gone for the last 2 months. So he's come here those few times.
Okay.
I haven't.
What about your guys' sexual relationship?
I haven't wanted to have sex in a very long time, but that's due to my psychiatric medications. It just completely kills anything down there. It's not enjoyable. It's not fun for me. So I don't have sex, and I think that was a big problem not a big problem, but of course an issue in our relationship.
So now she's basically admitting that actually her not wanting to put out was an issue in the relationship. And yet she claims that she broke it all off because he wasn't living up to her expectations, basically. I think there's definitely more to the story here.
Did he ever mention that to you?
What exactly did he mention? I know he had told me he was like frustrated, I guess.
So let me just clarify this for one moment. Jenn is saying that she hasn't had relationships with him for a very long time because she's just not interested. She said it was an issue in their relationship. And she's also saying he's mentioned that he was frustrated. In another interview, She tells them that he has Viagra or whatever that other one is, and I can never remember it because I hadn't heard of it till this case. So you have this guy, your ex-boyfriend or whatever you want to call him, in your house. He has said to you that he is frustrated. He is taking, or he has in his possession, tablets to help his performance. And you're sending your 12-year-old daughter upstairs to sleep with him. And you're also talking about you're worrying that it's going to become a Woody Allen situation. Oh my gosh. This woman makes me so wild. If she didn't know what was going on, she must have like a quarter of a brain cell.
I'm gonna use the word frustrated.
Okay.
But I know he's had sexual relations with other people. But I'm not bothered by that. That's whatever he needs to do.
And after all that, she's talking about him having relations with other people. She says, whatever he needs to do. Well, does that include whatever he needs to do in your household to satisfy himself, Jen? The things that she is saying here, to me, scream guilt. It makes it even harder for me to believe that she could possibly be that clueless.
But yeah.
Okay. Well, obviously there's a little bit of, actually, I don't want to get to that yet. Who drives your car? Is it-
Primarily me.
Okay.
On Monday night, he drove my car.
Monday night when?
After we went to bed, after the cops had been called and all that, he took my car and decided to drive around to see if he could keep searching for her, looking for her, seeing if there was anything that.
What time was that, you remember?
I don't know. I know he took my car and left because when I got into the front seat of the car had been adjusted.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, remember I said I was gonna go out? And I'm like, yeah, that's right. You did tell me that you were gonna go out. I just don't remember. He never told me what time or anything. But he did mention earlier Monday, I'm gonna drive around. I can't just sit at home. I need to be looking for her. And I'm just like, okay, that's fine.
Okay, so here's the thing. She's saying here that she gave him permission to take her car out, that Monday evening. That basically means that if they have anything that proves that she knew what he did, anything in text messages or anything that can prove that she knew what he did to Maddie, by allowing him to borrow her car on the Monday evening, that makes her an accessory. I really hope that they do have something to prove that she knew what was going on. Because honestly, the way I feel about this woman right now, I would like to see her locked up for as long as legally possible.
You don't remember if that was in the evening or like sometime before midnight, after midnight?
Oh, before midnight.
Okay.
I go to bed. Well, that's Monday night. Not sure what time I went to bed Monday night. I want to say before midnight because I had to take my meds and I had to go to sleep. They only work if I take them the right way, my meds.
Mhm.
So I have to follow a strict routine with them. I'm gonna say it was before midnight.
Well, we know that's not true because shortly after midnight, they were outside their townhouse on that night, on the Monday night, having a conversation with the officers who turned up at their house. You'd think she would be able to remember that. And the thing is, too, it kind of puts a lie to her claims of needing to take her meds and go to sleep. Because essentially, that would, her being awake and actually looking completely stoned at midnight says to me that, well, she hadn't taken her meds at 11 o'clock or anything like that, or according to her narrative, she would have been passed out. She looked a bit dopey, but like I said, she looked like she was high on something, as did he. I mean, I guess we could all be reading it wrong, and maybe she just looked high because she had taken her meds before the officers turned up and someone had dragged her back out of bed to speak to the officers, which would then put lie to her claims that, you know, when she's out, she's completely out, and, you know, this notion that she didn't actually know anything because she was asleep. Because clearly, if the way she appeared in that body cam footage was because she had already taken her meds and they were knocking her out, for starters, I would expect to see more of a reaction of someone who's struggling to stay awake, for starters. But also, given her objections in all her other interviews, wouldn't you expect her to be informing the officers, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit hazy, I've just taken my meds and they're kicking in? Because in every other interview, when she doesn't want to answer something, she blames it on her medications. Had she taken her medications before the officers turned up on that Monday night, you would expect that, based on her history, that would give her a legitimate excuse to say, I'm sorry, I'm really out of it, I've just taken my medications. I need to go to sleep, can we talk about this tomorrow? Of course, that wouldn't go down well.
Okay, and then when you got into your car, when you didn't notice that the car was, or the seat was back?
Yesterday, whenever we got kicked out of the house, whenever they told us we couldn't go back in, forensics was coming.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I got into the car and I was like, oh, the seat's adjusted. I'm like, did you get in it? He's like, yeah, I took a drive last night, remember? I'm like, oh yeah, you did. You told me that.
So I gather, based on the interview times, that they were pretty much thrown out of the house around 7 o'clock in the evening. So essentially, what Jenn is telling us here is that less than 24 hours after reporting her daughter missing, she basically sat around on her ass all day at her house. She didn't go anywhere on the Tuesday after reporting Maddie missing. We know that Detective Hunt went and interviewed them around lunchtime, and I'd imagine, based on the way they looked in their body cam footage from like early that morning, you know, 12 a.m. that morning, I'd imagine that neither her or Sterns had been awake for long when Detective Hunt turned up. But honestly, if your child was missing, what would it take to make you want to stay at home all day while your child was missing? Because I would expect any normal parent to be so antsy that they wouldn't be able to stay in the house they would have to go somewhere to be able to just sit and do nothing. Like, oh my gosh, you've got to be joking, right?
So Monday night, did you ever come here to the sheriff's office Monday night?
No.
No? Okay. Did Stephan come here
I don't think
that
so.
you know of? Okay. Do you know? Were they talked to here or?
No, they were talked at her mom's place of business originally where they did the report.
Mhm.
And then we have been in contact with her at her apartment. But that was after the initial report was made.
That was last night.
Yes.
Okay.
Yesterday, the other detective, Frank,
Mhm.
responded around 10 o'clock in the morning and started looking at the school. I'm not sure when the initial contact was made with her. I want to say it was like around 11 or 12, right? At your apartment.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been in contact with her since then.
Okay. All right. Now, I understand that a detective recently showed you some pictures of not so pleasant things. Okay. What was discussed at that point?
They asked me if I recognized the penis.
Mm-hmm.
In one image I didn't. In the other image, not that I recognized the penis exactly, but I recognized the things around the penis.
Mm-hmm.
And
Like what? Clothing or?
clothing and like a pillowcase
Okay.
that was like underneath the penis in the picture. So I recognized that.
In other words, it was blatantly clear that the images they were showing her were from her own house. And yet she's still like, well, you know, if they're real, she's still trying to question whether the detectives are basically BSing her. And yet she could recognise that it was her own home.
Did he explain to you where those images came from?
You said Stephan's phone?
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Did he explain to you the content of those pictures?
I'm not sure.
So it's interesting here where he's asking her in terms of if the content of those pictures was described to her or explained to her. And she's saying, I'm not sure. Well, she knows what those pictures were about. She was told. And whether that is because she can't say it out loud, even if she knew about it, maybe there is a part of her that finds it traumatising and this is her reaction. She can't say the words. Or maybe she's just not entirely certain of what he's expecting her to give by way of answer at that point in time. It's just interesting that she does know, and this was in the same interview. I know it's been a long interview for her. And I mean, I could imagine, like, this is a couple of hours in. So she's probably mentally exhausted. She may have... Well, no, she hasn't blanked it out because she asked to see the images of Maddie. So why is she now playing dumb?
Just explain that they were in his phone, that there's evidence that they've been sexually active or doing things since she. That's.
Okay, so I boosted that as much as I could. And while I can't repeat all of those words because, the whole issue with demonetisation. But it sounds like she is there admitting to what those images mean and saying that Maddie was SULE active, which, I don't like the way she says that, because it makes it sound like Maddie was making a choice. Like, Maddie was acting up in a way that you wouldn't want your teenager to act up. In other words, putting the blame on Maddie. She's not saying, they're telling me that Stephan was doing these things to Maddie and had been doing them to her for several years. No, she's putting it back on Maddie. She's victim blaming. And what makes this even worse is that it's her own daughter.
What's Stephan's relationship with? You call her. What's their relationship like?
I was gonna say really good, super great. He treats her like one of his own. He's always been super sweet and kind to her, very accepting, warming, understanding of her, because she's got ADHD, so she's kind of a little, I'll say, abnormal.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I feel like I'm interrupting far too much with this interview, but there's just so many things here that need to be spoken about. So I apologise for people who get frustrated with me butting in so much and yabbering on so much. I am conscious of it, but I think there's so many important things here that need to be talked about. Now, she's just spoken here about Stephan's relationship with Maddie. This is a mother who, within the last couple of hours, has been told about an inappropriate relationship between Stephan and her daughter. An extremely inappropriate relationship between Stephan and her daughter. The things that she is describing here are essentially grooming tactics. Don't forget, this is a woman who has said, I joked about a Woody Allen situation. This is a woman who says, I was taught not to trust the man. This is a woman who talks about not allowing her daughter to go on sleepovers because she's worried about her being SA'd. She's just reeled off a list of things which should, given what she's found out, cause her to react. You should be connecting the dots at this point in time. If you're as worldly and knowledgeable as Jenn claims to be. This is not a woman who has said, I never saw anything. Well, she does at times say I never saw anything. But other times she makes it pretty damn clear that even though she won't say it in such terms, she makes it clear that it wasn't a suitable adult-child relationship between them. Had she not known about what was going on, I would expect a major reaction here as she starts to realise that she is describing what is essentially grooming behaviours or partner behaviours. But she's just matter of fact. And as for saying that she's a little abnormal because she's got ADHD, that's one of the things that pisses me off the most about this woman. I've got ADHD. I am a perfectly normal person. I like to think of my ADHD bits as superpowers in some regards. Because I have ADHD, like so many other people who have ADHD, I am capable of extreme empathy towards people. Because of my ADHD, I pick up on so many things that other people don't pick up on because I am taking in everything around me all the time. Because of my ADHD, I have an almost didactic memory. Okay, sometimes you can hear me, I get a bit vague and say because she said this kind of thing. But I can, if it's something that has engaged me and my brain isn't so full of multitudes and multitudes of facts about something, then I will regurgitate all sorts of facts that a lot of people will forget really quickly. Because of my ADHD, I have brilliant problem-solving skills. Why? Because sometimes things don't quite go to plan when you have ADHD. So it's just part of your everyday existence to learn how to get around things that are a struggle for you. Because the downside of ADHD is that you do, a lot of the time, struggle so much more than people who don't have ADHD. My first university degree, admittedly, I was working a 40-hour week at the same time as doing full-time study. Because when you have ADHD, you have no limitations. You don't think, wow, okay, maybe getting by on 4 to 6 hours sleep a night isn't so great after all. You just think, I need to get a university degree, I need to work 40 hours a week to pay for that. And you just do it. But at the same time, it was a major battle for me because of my ADHD. Because all the readings that you had to do and stuff like that was really hard for me to focus on. So I didn't come through with brilliant marks. So there are challenges that come with ADHD as well. But if I hyper-focus on something, you bet I'm probably going to do a better job of it than someone who doesn't have ADHD. Again, going back to it is a superpower. So to hear someone say that it is abnormal gets me so riled up. Because she's saying that hundreds and thousands of people all around the world are abnormal because they have ADHD. This from a person who has her own neurological issues. Does she describe herself as being abnormal because she struggles with bipolar? Because I don't believe that Jenn has ADHD. There's nothing there that would suggest to me that she has ADHD. I would say pure bipolar. I think the mistake there is some psychiatrists will mistake bipolar symptoms for ADHD symptoms and vice versa. And I think it seems pretty clear that Jenn is bipolar. Does that make her abnormal? No. Yes, she is somewhat abnormal, but not because of neurodiversity. Just because she's Jenn Soto and she's a complete utter spud.
It's like she doesn't act like every other kid, but you have to have extra patience and understanding for her. And he does that really well.
No sudden dawning realisation that you've just described a predator situation. I cannot believe that she would not connect the dots here with what she's saying.
And she's now, right, from what I understand? When she's around Stephan, does she act any different?
No, she's happy. She's like, hey, how are you? But she doesn't act any differently or weird around him. No.
Yes, that's the chihuahua snoring in the background. Jenn claiming that Maddie doesn't act any differently around Stephan. That's a joke. We've heard Deb Sterns, who was clearly in denial over what it meant, talking about Maddie being extremely affectionate towards Stephan. Talking about Maddie sitting on the end of the sofa and putting her arm around Stephan and telling him that she loved him. Apparently neither Deb Sterns or Jenn Soto thought that was unsuitable behaviour. We have Maddie laughing and telling Deb Sterns that she woke up with her leg across Stephan. Apparently neither Deb Sterns or Jenn Soto thought that was unsuitable behaviour either. And that's only 2 instances that we know of. I suspect there was a lot of unsuitable behaviour given the Woody Allen comment. That doesn't just come out of nowhere.
There's no really easy way to ask this, but do you think it's possible that Stephan and her are having a sexual relationship?
Before those images, I would have said absolutely not.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're telling me that on the other side of that that they showed me was her with her mouth, then there's nothing else I can believe. That has to be true. But before that evidence, I would have said no.
Now, you know, if that photo you showed me of my child eating a banana was real, then I guess she does like bananas. Before that, I would have told you she didn't like bananas. Jenn is so matter of fact when she's talking about these images. Again, she goes, if that's true. Well, how would it not be true, Jenn? Do you think they sat there and photoshopped an image just to get you upset? Well, if they did, it didn't work, did it? There's no emotion, no anger, no mental breakdown over this, no sadness, no sense of anxiety. She's just so matter of fact about it. Like it's just an everyday thing. Well, you know, if they're saying that this happened, well, yeah, maybe it did happen. Whatever.
Has Stephan always been, like, when you guys communicate and talk, or have you ever caught him in any kind of lies or not being truthful or anything like that?
No.
So he's been honest about everything, as far as you know?
As far as I know, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What a complete, utter load of codswallop. I know that's a ridiculous word, but it's one that might not get me demonetised. She has said about Stephan lying to his parents. She says in other interviews, well, he must have lied to me then. She must. No person is that dumb. I'm sorry, but No, not a chance. She likes to give this impression of being poor little innocent Jen who has no idea about any of this. But honest to goodness, when you listen to what she's saying, you listen to the way she tries to use her voice to manipulate. This is an extremely manipulative individual who lies. She knows Stephan has lied to her in the past. She knows he's done things that have broken her trust. For example, the text message that she sent him, I think it would have been about 9 months before Maddie was unalived by him, questioning how come basically he'd given Maddie medications that Maddie thought were bigger than her normal medications. When there was that instance when she couldn't wake Maddie up, she said she asked Stephan, essentially, what had happened. There's so many instances that she describes which prove that she does not trust him 100%, and that she knows that he lies. And yet she says here to this detective so boldly, no, she doesn't think he's ever lied to her.
I've never had to question. If I've had questions, I've had answers.
Mm-hmm.
So it was never.
Well, that makes no sense, does it? If I've had questions, I've had answers. Meaning that because he's answered my questions, no, I don't believe he's ever lied to me. Were they to then ask her about him lying to his parents and examples, I'm pretty sure she could give examples where his parents have asked him things and he's lied in answer. So I don't know what's going on in her brain at this point in time.
I never suspected anything. No.
How long have you been living?
I've lived in that house on and off.
Okay, so 13 years, roughly.
But yeah.
So,
Um,
where else did you live other than that?
for a little while, I moved into my mother's house during COVID.
Where did she live?
In-
Okay.
And then during COVID, it was another situation where he got promised the job down there and it didn't happen. We moved down there, got an apartment, and lived there for somewhere between 6 to 8 months. And then
Moved down where?
I'm sorry, to Port Charlotte, Florida,
Okay.
which is next to Sarasota County.
Mhm.
It's in Charlotte County.
Mhm.
We moved down to Port Charlotte during the whole COVID, where everyone was quarantining time.
Mhm.
We moved during that time and stayed in Port Charlotte.
What about Stephan? How long has Stephan lived in?
I'll say on and off for 7 years or 6 years. The first year we were dating, we were just, he was still staying at his parents.
Where does his parents live?
At the time, they lived in Winter Garden, Florida, but now they live in Northport, Florida. That's who he lives with down there.
Oh, okay. What about family? Any other family around here?
Who, him?
Mm-hmm.
No. I think he's got distant relatives, but nobody he's ever talked to like that.
What about friends, or do you guys have friends? Are all your friends in?
All of his friends are in Northport, Florida. He made a big group of gaming friends down there. He's got some coworkers he talks to here, but no one I've seen him hang out with lately.
Now she's talking about his co-workers from Disney and saying no one I've seen him hang out with lately. And yet in other interviews, she never brings up any of the people that he knew from Disney and said, well, this is where they lived. Which you would think, if she was really concerned about finding her child, she would be giving them every little skerrick of information possible. She would want to list every single person from Disney that he has ever hung out with, on the off chance that there is something near their place, or somewhere near their place, where Stephan could have taken her daughter. But she just dismisses it.
Okay. What about you? Are your friends or?
Sorry. Do you mind stepping up for a second?
Yep. Give me 1 second, okay?
1 second. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
Now, this is another good spot to stop. There's still probably another half hour-ish left on this interview. Basically, there's a big long gap here in the interview, so it's a good spot to stop and then come back to it tomorrow. On that note, I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on what's been said in this particular part of the interview, because I think there's quite a few revealing things from Jenn which don't put her in a good light, if you ask me. So, on that note, thank you for listening. If you are new to my channel, please subscribe. And of course, also please hit that like button and leave a comment. Thank you, and I'll catch you in the next one.
Times